Hey everyone, welcome to Chapter 9, which is all about employee development. Again, really important chapter because we spent the first couple of weeks talking about what happens, how do we look at HR overall as kind of as a whole system, and then we spent week 2 kind of learning about the different laws and about the different strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that we looked at. In week 3, obviously we looked all about recruitment and bringing people into the organization and different strategies for recruitment, different strategies for onboarding, things along those lines. All very important, but I think when we look at chapters 8 and 9, and then even into 10, obviously what do we do with an employee once we get them into the organization? It's obviously it's easy. I put that term in quotation marks. It's easier to get an employee into an organization, but keeping them, retaining them is really the challenge. And chapter 9 goes all into about how do we develop employees, how do we retain them, and making sure that we don't lose them to the outside, to outside workforces. And obviously, the chapter 9 starts kind of talking about things like, a self-assessment and reality checks and things along those lines, and goal setting and action planning. Self-assessment, employees spend a lot of time looking at themselves and figuring out what goals do I want to accomplish? What do I want out of the organization? And things like reality checks and helping them get to an understanding of things like that is highly critical. Obviously, goal setting is incredibly important. We kind of talked about goal setting a little bit in chapter 8, but what do we want an employee to accomplish? I've read articles, by high level journals, that are associated with like Harvard and Yale, and they asked employees, what do you want most out of an organization? And you would think obviously money or better benefits would be at the top of the list, and it's actually not. It's actually a little bit further down. The most important thing for employees is the ability to learn and grow new skill sets. The ability to learn and grow new skill sets. And that's all what goal setting and action planning is about. So make sure you read those details in the chapter about that. Your chapter also talks about things like 360-degree feedback, and we kind of mentioned this, back in chapter 8, but with 360-degree feedback, everybody's it's a full, a circle analysis. You're evaluating yourself and your coworkers and your boss, and you're getting all this feedback so that you can help set yourself better goals and how you can contribute better to the organization. So make sure you read about 360-degree feedback. And then your book goes into different ways that we can help employees develop. It talks about things like job rotation, which you may not see as much like in like high level management positions, but in kind of more lower level, entry level, middle positions, you might see people rotate different departments and different jobs. And frankly, I think it's a good idea to even do it at the managerial and director level, because again, I might be an HR director, but I need to know how marketing works. I need to know how the finances and accounting work. So the idea of rotating different positions and jobs, I think, is a really great thing. Your book does a great job talking about mentoring, and the importance of having, a formal mentoring program in an organization. I think it's critical because, again, especially with younger workers who just don't have the experience, getting to learn from people who've been in the organization a while, and even people who are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s can still have mentors. That's not to say that age should be a defining factor for a mentor. It absolutely shouldn't be. So often people think, well, only young employees need mentors, and that's not true at all. So I'm 40 years old, and I've had 3 or 4 mentors that I looked up to since I was in my early 20s. So for almost 20 years, I've had a similar group of mentors who've really helped me through my HR career. So it's a great section. So it talks about things about different job assignments. How do we determine what do we do with an employees? Do we have the option of bringing in temporary employees? We can put employees on sabbaticals so they can go out and learn out in the world and then bring what they learned back. So there's different types of job assignments that have different pros and cons. So make sure you kind of read through that section when it talks about job assignments and the pros and cons of each approach. And finally, and again, I know just like chapter 8, chapter 9 has a lot of information in it. And again, I admit that I'm not covering every single aspect. I don't want to bore you to death and have it, because it's a 20 or 30-minute video. But the final main topic that I think is really important for chapter 9 is talks about the glass ceiling. And the glass ceiling, it traditionally has been, imagine literally a ceiling that's made of glass where you can see beyond it, but you can't go any further. and it's been kind of it's a strong metaphor for more marginalized groups, women, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, a lot of different marginalized groups in American history who have historically struggled to go beyond that ceiling. They can the sky's the limit, as the saying goes, but you can only go so far before you hit the wall. And a lot of times, because of policies or different laws, it's negatively affected women and other minorities. So again, it's incredibly important to read that section and learn about it. Again, in my role, being a diversity, equity, and inclusion specialist, I deal with the glass ceiling all the time. How can I help, marginalized groups get beyond that and get to their truest potential? So again, it's very important to learn about the glass ceiling and read about it. So again, incredibly important chapter, really talking about how we develop employees and why it's so important to continue that on. And again, in our next chapter, we'll kind of talk about, take that to the next step. But again, great chapter. Thank you everybody for your attention, and we will talk soon.